This story is about an extraordinary child who has lost his memory. As he slowly begins to interact with people, everyone around him is astonished by his remarkable abilities. He can learn any skill within moments, and tasks that humans have practiced for years, he performs even better. The story begins with a man driving his car at very high speed. Sitting beside him is a 10-year-old boy named Daryl. A helicopter is chasing them, and the man is determined to protect this child at any cost. In the middle of the road, he stops and lets Daryl out, then speeds ahead in the car. The helicopter continues to follow, unaware that the boy has already been left behind. As the chase intensifies, the car loses balance and plunges into a ravine. The people in the helicopter assume that both the man and Daryl have died, so they leave the area. But in reality, Daryl is still alive, wandering alone in the forest, searching for a way out. Soon, an elderly couple comes across him. Seeing a young boy alone in the woods, they are shocked and begin asking him several questions. Daryl, however, cannot answer them properly. Concerned, they take him to an orphanage. When Daryl arrives there, he sees children happily playing together. They invite him to join, but he admits that he doesn't know how to play any games. The children are surprised by this. Later, Daryl undergoes a medical checkup, and the results show that he is physically normal. Yet he has no memory of his parents or his past. The doctor concludes that he is suffering from short-term memory loss, which has caused him to forget everything that happened before. The following day, an officer arrives and takes Daryl to a foster home run by Joyce and her husband. Until his real parents are found, this is where Daryl must stay. Joyce and her husband immediately feel a strong affection for him. Though they notice something unusual, he knows very little about ordinary social things. Nearby lives a boy named Turtle, who comes to meet Daryl and invites him to go outside together. Daryl agrees, and Turtle begins sharing many things that are completely new to him. Later, Turtle even takes Daryl to his own house, where his older sister is present. Turtle often plays a computer car racing game with her, and proudly tells Daryl that his sister holds the highest score. He encourages Daryl to try the game, and to everyone's surprise, Daryl beats the high score on his very first attempt. Both Turtle and his sister are stunned, insisting that Daryl must have played before. But Daryl calmly explains that he has never played such a game in his life. The next day, Daryl goes to school with Turtle. Their class teacher gives everyone a test. Within just a few seconds, Daryl completes it and hands it back. The teacher is astonished and reminds him that the answers must be correct. Daryl politely suggests checking them, pointing out that question number 9 was written incorrectly by the teacher, but he has solved it properly. When the teacher reviews the paper, he is shocked to see that Daryl has answered every single question correctly, including the one the teacher himself had miswritten. The class bursts into laughter, teasing the teacher for making mistakes, while Daryl's brilliance shines through on his very first day at school. Later, when Daryl returns home, Joyce's husband Richardson, his foster father, suggests playing baseball. Daryl has never played before and doesn't even know how to hold a bat. Richardson patiently explains the rules and shows him the proper grip. Daryl quickly understands everything, including the timing of when to hit the ball. As Richardson throws the ball, Daryl swings and delivers a powerful shot that leaves Richardson completely amazed. He hadn't expected a 10-year-old to hit so well. Thinking it might be luck, Richardson throws another ball, but this time Daryl's shot is even better with perfect timing. Impressed, Richardson jokes that perhaps in a past life Daryl was a great baseball player. He then tells Daryl that next week he has a friendly bet with his friend over a baseball match, and he wants Daryl to join him so they can win a game together. That evening, the officer who had earlier brought Daryl to Joyce and Richardson's home arrives again to collect a full report about him. Joyce explains that Daryl seems like a perfect child. Once he learns something, he performs it flawlessly every single time, with precise timing, almost as if knowledge has been programmed inside him. She admits that it feels like he doesn't even need their guidance. The officer responds by suggesting that perhaps Daryl's D.A.R.Y.L parents raised him exceptionally well, which is why he behaves this way. He reminds Joyce that her responsibility is simply to care for the children placed with her. The next day, Richardson takes Daryl along to a baseball match. On the way, he stops at an ATM to withdraw money, but the machine refuses to dispense cash. Richardson assumes the machine is broken. Daryl calmly remarks that machines never make mistakes. Only humans do. After Richardson steps aside, Daryl presses a few buttons, and suddenly the money comes out. Richardson is delighted and asks how it happened, but Daryl gives no explanation. Then, Daryl continues pressing more buttons, and without Richardson realizing it, he transfers a huge sum of money into Richardson's account. What was once a modest balance now turns into thousands, though Richardson remains unaware of the change. They finally reach the baseball game. The opposing team performs strongly and sets a high score. But when it is Daryl's turn, he delivers astonishing shots one after another, leaving everyone amazed. Thanks to his extraordinary performance, Richardson's team wins the match. Joyce is present too, and she is deeply impressed by Daryl's talent. Secretly, she wishes to adopt him permanently. Yet she knows that if his real parents are found, she cannot do so, because the officer had already explained this condition. Joyce and Richardson have no children of their own, and Joyce begins to wonder, if Daryl is so perfect at everything, does he even need them? Later, when Daryl approaches Joyce, he senses irritation in her words. Troubled, he shares this with his friend Turtle. Turtle explains that Joyce's feelings are understandable. Daryl is so flawless that he doesn't seem like a normal child. Children are supposed to make mistakes, be mischievous, and sometimes even trouble their parents. But Daryl never does any of that. This thought settles in Daryl's mind. At the next match, he deliberately performs poorly, causing his team to lose. Richardson, surprised, asks why he played so badly. Daryl accuses him of being a gambler who only wants to use him to make money. Richardson is shocked by this accusation. Joyce gently explains to Daryl that children should never speak in such a way. Daryl listens and promises that from now on, he will never talk like that again. After returning home, Joyce and Richardson learn that Daryl's real parents have visited the orphanage and will soon come to take him away. This news makes them both deeply sad because they have already grown very attached to him. Richardson goes to Daryl's room and gently tells him that his parents have been found and he will be going back home. He adds that whenever Daryl misses them, he should always come back to visit. The next day, Daryl's parents arrive and ask if he recognizes them. Daryl replies that he feels he has seen them somewhere before, but he cannot remember clearly. Joyce and Richardson realize that these truly are his parents, but his memory loss prevents him from recalling everything. Soon, they take Daryl to an airport where a private plane is waiting. Inside, Daryl goes near the pilots and curiously asks how the plane works. The pilots explain a few things, but then Daryl surprises them by describing advanced details about the aircraft that leave them stunned. Meanwhile, his so-called parents are shown talking privately, expressing disbelief that such a major mission has been accomplished so easily. They then bring Daryl to a laboratory, where the shocking truth is revealed. Daryl is not a human child at all, but a robot created in that very lab. The two scientists posing as his parents are actually his creators. They begin running tests on him, since this is the first time he has ever lived outside the lab. Reviewing his recordings, they are astonished to discover that Daryl experiences genuine human emotions. He can laugh, cry, feel pain, and even understand the meaning of love and affection. The scientists present their findings to the military, explaining that Daryl is a marvel of science. But the military officer dismisses him, saying they do not want a robot with feelings. They want a war machine designed to fight enemies. He insists that Daryl is useless to them and could become a liability if the outside world learns the truth. Therefore, he orders that Daryl be destroyed. The scientists are heartbroken, realizing that if Daryl is killed, he will suffer just like a human being. This explains why, at the beginning of the story, one man risked everything to take Daryl out of the lab. He wanted the boy to live freely as a normal human. Now, the scientist also decides that Daryl deserves to live like a real person. He confides in Joyce and Richardson, revealing the entire truth, that Daryl is a robot, but one who feels and behaves exactly like a human. He insists that he does not want Daryl to be destroyed and promises to find a way to bring him back to them. He asks Joyce and Richardson to protect Daryl once he is safe. Hearing this, they are overjoyed because in their hearts, they already consider Daryl their son. That night, a military general arrives at the lab to check whether the scientists have dismantled Daryl. To deceive him, the scientists cleverly perform surgery on an animal and try to convince the general that Daryl has been completely destroyed. But the general remains suspicious, knowing that a scientist would never so easily destroy his own creation. He inspects every system carefully and soon discovers that Daryl's system is still active, meaning Daryl is alive. Before the general can reach him, one scientist quickly places Daryl in a car and drives away. Security forces chase them, but Daryl himself takes control of the car and speeds off. Along the way, they switch vehicles and the scientist resumes driving. Soon, a police car blocks their path, attempting to stop them. The scientist realizes that if he halts, they will be captured. He crashes into the police car to escape, but the officers fire their weapons, and a bullet strikes the scientist, leaving him gravely wounded. Though they manage to get away, the scientist is now taking his final breaths. He tells Daryl that he created him and considers him his son, but from now on Daryl must protect himself. With those words, the scientist dies, leaving Daryl heartbroken. Daryl then returns to the military facility, where he activates the alarm system. Soldiers rush into action, believing there is an emergency. In the chaos, Daryl climbs into a fighter jet and takes off. Security quickly realizes what has happened and contacts him over the radio, warning that if he does not return immediately, they will shoot down the plane with missiles. Daryl ignores their threats, covers the cockpit camera with chewing gum, and calls his friend Turtle, asking him to meet at the lake near their home. Turtle is shocked and asks how Daryl is coming, but Daryl simply says he won't believe it until he sees it. Meanwhile, the military launches a missile toward Daryl's plane, set to strike within 6 minutes. Just before impact, Daryl ejects from the seat, parachuting out as the missile hits the jet, causing a massive explosion. The military assumes Daryl has been destroyed, believing no one could survive such a blast. But at the lake, Turtle and his sister arrive and see Daryl struggling in the water. He cannot swim and begins to sink. Turtle dives in to save him while his sister calls for help. Together, they pull Daryl out, but he remains unconscious after being underwater for too long. Everyone fears he is dead, but Turtle insists that Daryl cannot die because he is a robot. At that moment, another scientist, the one who had helped create Daryl, appears. She knows the military believes Daryl perished in the explosion and is no longer pursuing him. She reactivates Daryl's mind, bringing him back to life, and takes him to Joyce and Richardson so he can finally have a family. Overjoyed, they welcome him as their own son. Daryl now has both a loving family and a loyal friend named Turtle, and with them, he begins to live his life just like a human being. And that wraps up Daryl's unforgettable journey, a story of science, emotions, and the search for family. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing movie explanations. See you in the next video.